In this video, I'm going to show you how to purl front and back and purl front, back, and front, both in the Continental style and in the English style of knitting. So to purl front and back, Continental style, you begin by purling as normal, but don't slide the stitch off your left needle. Instead, bring your working needle around to the back and underneath that first stitch, then up through it from the bottom to the top and purl it again. Then you slide it off the needle. This produces a 1 stitch increase. So you have one stitch that looks like a normal purl stitch, and then you have another stitch kind of floating beside it here that looks like another purl stitch. I'll show you one more time. Bring your yarn in front, purl like normal, but don't slide it off your needle. Bring your working needle around the back and between the first and second stitch, so you go up through the bottom of that first stitch and purl it again, pretty much like a normal purl stitch, and then slide it off your needle. Now to do it English style, it's exactly the same, but it looks a little different since you're holding the yarn in your other hand. So again, bring your yarn forward between the needles, purl one like normal, and leave it on the left needle. Whoops. Let's try that again. Purl one like normal and leave it on the left needle. Then go in the back underneath the stitch and up through from the bottom to the top and purl it again. Yeah, I'm a little clumsier with English style because I normally knit Continental style. There we go. I'll show you one more time. Hopefully it'll be a little smoother. Purl one like normal. Then go in the back underneath the stitch from the bottom to the top and purl it again. Then slide it off your needle. And you can see it looks exactly like it did when I did a Continental style. You've got the stitch that looks like a purl stitch and then another one next to it that's just kind of floating. If we flip it over, it looks a lot like a knit through the front and back, except you've got a stitch that looks like a floating purl stitch right there and a knit stitch right next to it. For a knit front and back, you would have a knit stitch and then the floating purl stitch would be on the other side. Now for the purl front, back, and front, we're going to do the exact same thing we did before. I'm showing a Continental style now. I'll show it English style in a minute. So purl like normal, and then just like we did for the purl front and back, we're going to go in the back of that stitch and purl it again, but not slide it off the needle yet. We're going to come back around to the front. You might have to move that working yarn out of the way a little bit and purl into the front of it again. And this produces a 2 stitch increase. So we have the first stitch looks pretty much like a normal purl, and you've got these 2 other stitches here floating out beside it. Now I'll show you English style. Bring the yarn forward, purl like normal, then purl into the back of the stitch by going underneath the stitch and bringing your needle up through it, and purl again, but don't slide it off the needle yet. We're going to come back around to the front and purl one more time. It gets a little tight sometimes. You gotta watch how tight you're holding your tension. So purl one more time into the front and now slide it off of the needle. And again, you've got the 1 stitch that looks pretty much like a normal purl, and you've got the 2 stitches over here floating next to it that are your 2 increases. And if we flip it over, you can see this stitch looks like pretty much like a normal knit stitch, and then you've got the 2 stitches here floating next to it that are your increases.